right, how y'all doing this morning? Ooh, y'all should have got some coffee. All right, so I promise I'm not going to bore you to death. Let me turn my timer on here. They say I have about an hour and a half to talk to you. Is that right? Hour? No? Okay. We're going to make this short. It's going to be 20 minutes. So first, let me thank the mayor, his team, and just the city for putting on this piece. This is so valuable. You guys have no idea how valuable this is going to be to you. Let me thank the University of Akron and Goodyear for sponsoring the endeavor and seeing the value in you guys as far as helping you cultivate your leadership ability. And then, no, I don't see any parents in the room, but we want to acknowledge the parents who dragged you out of bed this morning and dropped you off. They're, you know what I'm saying, they're definitely some MVPs as well. And more importantly, man, I want all of y'all to give yourself a round of applause for being here. So let's give you a quick shout out. The reason you guys deserve applause is because I'm from Akron, and you could be anywhere today other than here. I grew up in the streets of Akron, in the neighborhoods of Akron, so I know where you could be. And I'm just thankful and just feel truly blessed that you're here with me this morning and allowing me to share a little bit of my story here with you. So first and foremost, I am a kid from Akron, and I'm so proud to say that, and forever grateful to just be able to share my story here with you. Well, whenever I'm asked to do a keynote speech, I always pray and meditate over what I'm going to say to the audience, because I know my job is to give you at least one nugget that you're going to walk out of here having, that you're going to be able to apply to the rest of your life and somehow benefit you. So knowing and just having that responsibility to talk to you about something like this, leadership is a tough topic. And it's a tough topic because it's so broad, and we hear and see so many leaders. So quite frankly, it's one of those topics that, you know, I was slightly nervous about. But after I prayed about it and meditated over it, I said, you know, rather than being nervous to talk about a topic like leadership, I'm going to share a little of my story with you. So is that cool if I share some of my story with you? Yes? All right, cool. Appreciate y'all for that. So this is how the story starts. I arrived here in Akron yesterday, and as soon as I arrived, I contacted one of my homeboys I grew up with and reached out to him. He was going through a tough time, so I reached out to him, went over to his house, saw him and his sister. And, you know, we're doing what we do. This is, when I say a childhood friend, this is like my man from the second grade. Any of y'all got friends that you go back to like elementary with? Yeah, right. So this is like my man, my homie. And we talked and just, you know, kind of just talked about our childhood and reminiscing. And as my daughters would say, I have twin daughters who will be turning 10 here shortly. We talked about the olden days. So the olden days before cell phones, can y'all believe that? Before social media, before Wi-Fi. So this is like back in the day, right? And we talked about those olden days. And as we talked about those days, we also talked about our friends. And unfortunately, a lot of our friends are in jail. Matter of fact, when I ran the numbers on it, 90% of the friends I grew up with are either in jail or have been to jail. And that's a real life number. So again, that's why I'm thankful to have you here today to spend some time with us, because I don't want you to be one of those 90%. But as I was talking to him, you know, he asked a question. He's like, yo, P, and actually they call me Peanut. But so, yo, Nut, why are you in town? And I said, well, I'm delivering a keynote speech over at the University of Akron. And he looked at me and he's like, man, wow, that's great. And I said, yeah, ain't that crazy? And I said it because he knows where we came from, right? Growing up. So I thought it was just crazy to have the opportunity to come over here to help support the mayor's initiative around leadership, and also too to speak to you. But what he said to me was, nah, I'm not surprised. He said, it's not crazy. You always stay positive. So the issue with that is it kind of bothered me, because when he said that, he said, you always stay positive. I said, well, I thought about it, and I thought about it for hours. What did he mean I always stayed positive? So after I thought about it, it wasn't that I stayed positive. It was that I just had some different influences in my life. Because again, we grew up doing the exact same things. We grew up in the same neighborhood. We listened to the same music. We did some of the things I'm not going to share with you here right now, but we all had those same experiences. So what was the difference? And I know you heard my bio. So yes, I have multiple degrees. I've launched several businesses. I've been with Fortune 500 companies. I've been part of a team to bring in $1 billion to a firm. So what was the difference between me and the other 90% of my friends that are either in jail or have been to jail? And as I start to really think about it, the major difference was the influences I had in my life. And if you take anything away from what we discussed today, leadership is simply one thing. It's influence. Okay? I'll share a quote here with you, a quote from John Maxwell. Everything rises and falls with leadership. Your family, your finances, your school, your government, your city, your community, everything rises and falls with leadership. But what is leadership? Leadership is not a position. Leadership is not, hey, you're the leader and you tell people what to do. Leadership is influence. And some of the most powerful leaders are the ones who don't tell you what to do, but show you what to do. I'll give you an example. At this time, I want to acknowledge my parents, Perry and Amy Jeffries. And growing up, even though I was in the streets, they were always my primary influencers. Okay? And this is the power in that. So though I did the same things that my friends did, and again, we said 90% of them have done jail time. Here are a couple examples of how my parents were influences in my life. I had perfect attendance all the way to the 8th grade. Never missed a day of school, never was late, perfect attendance for all those years. And the only time I missed school in the 8th grade was because I got the chicken pox. And then I went on to have perfect attendance through high school. Well, that's something I learned from my parents. You have to show up. My father's a retired firefighter for the City of Akron. My mom has worked in retail and actually worked for some of the rubber plants in the area. They were never late and they always showed up. So that's an influence I received. Another influence I received, I was never allowed to bring home a grade lower than a B, right? So this is just the rule. And the one time I brought home a C, now not 4 C's, not a D, not an F, I brought home 1 C. My dad threatened to kick me off the basketball team. Keep in mind, I was actually pretty good in basketball. I went on to get a Division I scholarship. He was like, oh, you're getting a C? You don't need to be playing basketball. My mom, thank goodness, talked him out of it and continued to let me to play. But that was the standard that was set. A C was not acceptable because a C was average, and they knew I wasn't average. Excellence was never an option. They set that standard. This is how we do things, and if you're going to do it, you're going to do it right. And then also, too, work ethic. So we had mad hustles growing up. My dad was a firefighter. My mom worked in retail. We had a family paper route. We had a tree trimming service. It was crazy. My dad had me working like it was the last days. PJ and Sons tree trimming and removal, right? So I was playing basketball. I was in sports. I had a tree cutting job with my dad. We were both swim instructors. We were over at Perkins Pool teaching kids how to swim. So work ethic, you show up and you work your butt off. So hindsight being 2020 is not just about what they told me to do, it's what they showed me to do. Because when we had the paper route, it wasn't, oh, Keith, they call me Keith because I'm the third. Keith, hey, go out and throw the papers. No, it was a family business. My mom was up 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning rolling papers. And anybody, you know what I'm saying, understand, and living in this area, winters can be bad. And the one thing about the paper route, there are no days off. Has anybody here ever been had a paper route? Right? There are no days off. There's no Christmas off on the paper route. People want that paper. So again, they just taught me tremendous work ethic. So I don't ever remember my parents calling off work. My father volunteered for the Red Cross. I mentioned he was a firefighter. He's a member of the NAACP. He's an active member over at the Urban League. And my mom was one of the hardest working people I knew. That's leadership. Okay? That's leadership. Leadership, again, is not a title. Leadership is not a position. Leadership is influence. And you can influence people by your words, but also too, you can influence people by your actions. So this is what I know for certain, is that everyone in this room has the seeds of leadership in them, period, point blank. Because at some point in time in your young lives, you've influenced somebody. So whether it was a younger sibling, brother or sister, whether it was a classmate, whether it was a parent, whatever the case may be, you've had some influence, which means you already have the seed of leadership in you. It's just a matter of nurturing that seed and allowing it to come out. So as we talk about leadership, here's my thought. And I'm making sure my timer stays here because I was told I had a certain amount of time and we don't want to go over that time. But here's my thought. There are no good or bad leaders. Period. There's no good or bad leaders. You either have leaders who are effective or leaders who are not effective. Okay, let me say that again. There are no good or bad leaders. You either have effective leaders or non-effective leaders. And leaders drive results. Now, here's the issue. Those results can be positive or negative. So you can have a really good leader driving you down the wrong street, period. Okay, but understand but not saying that they're a poor leader because they're effective because they got you to follow them. But it doesn't mean that you were going in the right direction. So understand that leadership is about how effective you are. It's not about whether or not you're good or you're bad. Now, let me tell you a decision that I had to make about 2 decades ago. So it was about 20 years ago. I was I was in a business, and one of my mentors asked me a question. So he came up to me the same way I'm coming up to you, and I'm like, hey, I see crazy potential in you, the same way I see crazy potential when I look across this room. But he said, I see this potential, but I got a question for you. Do you want to be successful or do you want to be relevant? So I'm asking you guys that same question. Do you want to be successful or do you want to be relevant? And you're probably looking at me like, what is this dude talking about? It's early in the morning. I ain't had no coffee. So this is the deal. There's a difference. So let me tell you the difference between being successful and being relevant. Being successful is based upon what you accomplish as an individual, personally. I can be successful and you can still be losing, but I can say I won. Being relevant is measured by how many other people you help to become successful. Okay? So success can be measured as just by the individual. How relevant you are is based upon how many people you help achieve success. So at that day, and after I thought about it, I said, you know what? I'm going to be relevant. So I chose to be relevant. So I chose to use whatever God-given gifts I have to be able to impact lives. So you may hear my bio and hear all of these accolades, but underneath all of those fancy numbers, the millions, the billions and whatnot, it all comes down to, I want to help people win. I want to see people win. I want to see you win. So if you have decided just from those words and said, you know what, this dude may know what he's talking about, and I choose to be relevant, I'm going to give you some tips here that's going to help you out. So we're here to discuss leadership. Let's break the word leader down. L, learn from your mistakes. Because guess what? You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. How do I know? Because I've made a ton of them. So we've heard the accolades of the $4 million real estate portfolio and things of that nature. But what you did not hear in that bio is how I've lost everything twice. Completely broke. Lights turned off. Custom made suit. Lost everything. Twice. And I could have said, man, I lost everything. I'm going to sit back and feel sorry for myself. No, those were lessons learned. And it's so crazy now because as I'm working with my clients and businesses and helping them build their wealth, my experiences have actually helped them win because I can tell them what not to do. I can tell them to turn right when they should turn left. So L, learn from your mistakes. E, exercise mentally and physically. Do y'all know the difference between being ordinary and extraordinary? Well, let me ask this question. Who wants to be extraordinary? Raise your hands. If you don't raise your hand, you got to get out the room. Okay, everybody wants to be extraordinary, put your hands down. What's the difference between being extraordinary and being ordinary? What's the difference between the words? The only difference between those words is the word extra. For you to be able to do a little extra than the ordinary, you have to be physically and mentally fit. You have to. That's something that sometimes people don't think about. If you're going to be an effective leader, you can't be an effective leader out of shape mentally and physically. So you need to train that. A, add value to every situation. When you turn your mindset around being relevant, you then walk into every situation trying to add value. Even if you're not the expert, how can you add value? How can you add to the situation? How can you add to the success of others? What can you bring to the table that's going to help move the needle or help the situation out? Think about that in your family situations, in your personal situations, with your friends. Are you adding value? Because if you're not adding value, then that means you're doing the exact opposite. You're taking value away. And we want to make sure that we're adding to the world. D, drive results. We said how you measure a leader is based upon the results. So you got to drive results. E, execute on your vision. Leaders have vision. And sometimes people are going to laugh at the vision you have. Maybe you want to be the next tech startup. Maybe you want to be the president of the United States. Maybe you want to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. That's your vision. Don't never let anybody take that away from you. Have your vision and run towards it. Next thing we have here, R, read. I can always tell how impactful a leader is by asking them one question. What books are you reading? If they say, oh, I ain't reading nothing, that's a leader I don't need to talk to. Because leaders are readers. I have probably 30 or 40 audiobooks on my phone. When I'm doing my cardio, working out first thing in the morning, I'm listening to books. Leaders are readers. So read. And S, share what you've learned with the next generation. Next generation may be your little brother or sister. Maybe not even say, I'll retract that statement, not even the next generation. If you learn something dope today that I share with you, share it on your social media. Share it on your IG, your Snapchat. There may be something you learning here today that could change somebody's life. So share that. Don't just take that information and not share it. That's important. So that's leaders. So I didn't see anybody write it down. Y'all gonna commit that to memory, or you need to take your phones out and type it in your notes. Y'all good? L, leaders, learn from your mistakes. E, exercise. A, add value. D, execute on your vision. R, read. S, share what you've learned today. So in closing here, and I think I'm doing pretty good on time, Lastly, but just as important, I've already told you, shared a quote with you that everything rises and falls with leadership. Everything. But I'll share this with you as well. In order to be a good leader, you must first learn how to be an excellent follower. And you may be thinking like, what do you mean? I want to lead. Before you can lead effectively and impact lives, you first must become a good follower. So I'm gonna give you these quick 5 rules on being a good follower. Rule number 1, ask for help. Biggest mistake I made, cost me about a $4 million portfolio, was I had too much ego to ask for help. Leaders ask for help when they need it. 2, never stop growing. You cannot lead if you stop developing as a person. The only way you can effectively lead is if you're a couple steps in front of the people that you're leading. So if you're trying to lead a group for a year, you need to be thinking about what we're doing in the next 2 or 3 years. So never stop growing. 3, put others' needs in front of your own. I can always spot an effective leader by how much they care about other people. You heard in my bio that I had the opportunity to play for coaching legend Bill Van Gundy. You may not know Bill Van Gundy, but depending on your age in here, you may have heard of his 2 sons. He has 2 sons who've coached in the NBA, and one's a commentator right now, Jeff Van Gundy and Stan Van Gundy. So I played basketball for their dad. And he was one of the best coaches I ever had. And the reason he's one of the best coaches I ever had wasn't because he was great at plays and great at telling me what to do. But when he saw I had an area that needed improvement, he didn't send the assistant coach to work out with me first thing in the morning at 5:30, 6 o'clock before school started. He showed up. And he was probably 60, almost 70 years old back then, passed me the ball and rebounding. So I know he was going to get the best out of his teams because you knew he cared. Grow your network of friends. I shared this with an organization not too long ago, that your net worth is your network. We're all, and you got your group of friends, not saying go out and get friends. I know some of y'all like no new friends. Nah, build your network, because you may stagnate your growth by only hanging around the same people all the time. Venture out and meet some new people. I don't know if everybody in here knows each other. By the end of the day, you should have met every person in here, because you don't know if you're sitting next to the next president, CEO, next multi-billionaire. Build those relationships, because it's going to force you out of your comfort zone. And then last, stay authentic to yourself. As I said earlier, I'm a kid from Akron. I'm from the hood. I could tell y'all some stories that would blow your mind. And again, it was just, I had a different set of influencers in my life. The reason I'm not one of the 90% that's in jail or have done jail time. So be authentic to yourself. My clients who work with me know I keep it totally 100 with them all the time. And sometimes use some choice words, but I've been really good about not using those today. But in closing, y'all, my prayer is just simply this. I want to see all of y'all win. I want to see you win in your families. And sometimes that means you may have to step up and be the leader. Sometimes that happens. I want to see you win in school. I want to see you win in the classroom. I want to see you win in your future finances. Kind of like DJ Khaled said, I just want to see you win. All we do is win. I want to see all of y'all win. And remember this, everything rises and falls with leadership, and leadership is what? Influence. Be a positive influence in your community, in your families, and I guarantee you, you'll reach goals that you never imagined. So that's all I have, group. That's my time. God bless. Thank you.